achieved.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Studio Day Heifer Day Quarantine. It's nice to have you today. Today's video, on the first half of it anyway, the first topic, I'm going to have to be very, very careful because I know that people can get very sensitive about certain topics. And this one's about running backs. So I know probably about 30% of you have already hit close. Like, screw that, I'm tired of hearing this guy trash running backs. So I'm not going to offer any opinions at the beginning of this video. I'm just going to read some things to you that I think are really interesting about the future of the NFL offensively. And this is one of my biggest things in football. I think adaptability is one of the biggest things. Innovation and adaptability are super important if you want to be successful in the NFL. What are you doing that other people are going to follow because it works? And one of the things that's going on that is really interesting to me, and Pro Football Focus wrote a great article on it, is think about a guy like Tony Pollard, a guy who's a running back / receiver. You know, he can kind of do a little bit of everything, and we sort of campaign, and I do too. I fall into this. Sort of campaign for, well, you line him up as a running back, and if they play him as a running back, now you motion him out to the slot, you get him matched up on a linebacker, and you kick butt, baby, right? It sounds logically like a really, really good idea. So what I want to do is talk about what I read on Pro Football Focus yesterday, because that's the way we think of it, right? A running back who's a really good receiver, you move him out of that backfield and to a wide receiver spot, you try to get him matched up on a linebacker, and I'm going to torch that linebacker, and it's going to be great. We're going to dominate. It's going to be awesome. Well, Pro Football Focus ran the numbers on this, and what I'm going to show you is the average yards per target when lined up as a slot or as a wide receiver. So, looky here, and what you'll see is at the very top is running backs, yards per target, 8.7. Tight ends lined up in the slot or at wide receiver, yards per target, 11.2. And wide receivers, 13.2. So we think, logically, that it would make sense if I've got a really good receiving running back, boom, move him out there and dominate, right? We're going to make things happen. And so my first reaction to this was, well, that's all running backs, right? What if we isolate it to the guys who are really good at this? Well, let's take Christian McCaffrey, right? He's awesome. 7.4 yards per catch when he lines up as a receiver, 9 yards per catch when he lines up in the backfield. So somewhere in here, defenses have figured out that trick, have figured out that bit, and how to defend that. Whether it's, and I think part of this is that linebackers aren't what they used to be for the most part. It's going to be very rare that you are getting your scat back running back matched up on a linebacker who can't cover, right? There's not a ton of those guys in the league now. Linebackers can run. Linebackers are super athletic. So it's really interesting. So then they move on to the next part of this conversation is, what about the other way? And when I talk about innovation, who am I talking about most often? The Patriots. So, of course, they were the first ones to basically discover an offensive cheat code, and it was Aaron Hernandez. Now, rest in peace, thoughts and prayers, murderer. But Aaron Hernandez. So, what happens if we do this the other way? So, running back, moving out to receiver, trying to find a mismatch, doesn't actually work the way that we think it does. You'd be better off with a receiver or a tight end out there. But what if you play a receiver at running back? Interesting concept, right? The Patriots did it with Aaron Hernandez in 2011. He lined up in the backfield. He carried the ball 5 times as a running back for 61 yards. He had twice as many rushing yards as any other Patriot had that day, right? So they changed. CeeDee. I think CeeDee's way in on this topic. So we're switching it around. We're flipping this thing on its head. We're saying, what about if we do this a different direction that isn't done as often? And teams are going to look at it like, what the hell? Surely they're not going to hand it to their tight end lined up at running back. Well, yes, they would. So when teams do this, wideouts and tight ends get 6.2 yards per carry. But obviously that's not genuine because a lot of that is jet sweeps, end around, stuff like that. But if you take that away and you say, okay, I lined up a receiver in the backfield as a running back, yards per carry, 5. Running backs, 4.2. So they're definitely not a negative when you line them up back there and seem to be a positive. What does it do for your entire offense on your yards per play if you move a receiver and line them up at running back? Basically nothing, at least over the Pro Football Focus era. So when you hand it to them, yes, the yards per carry is higher, but does it boost your offense up and make you tougher to deal with? Not necessarily. The yards per play is about the exact same. But here's where they had some fun with it. Isolate the players that you think would be good at this. Percy Harvin, Cordarrelle Patterson, Ty Montgomery, Randall Cobb, Aaron Hernandez, Tyreek Hill. And now you see yards per play jump to almost 7 yards per play, and that group of guys averages 6.5 yards per carry out of the backfield. So it's just a weird thing that I think the key in the NFL is being open to innovation and what happens if. So what happens if we move a scat back type running back who's a good route runner and you're like, man, you can get him in some mismatches. What happens if you move him to receiver? It's actually a net negative. What happens if I line up a similar dynamic threat that is called a wide receiver and put him in the backfield? It's a net positive. So it's interesting to me. And so teams, if you have a player like that, use them like that and see. You got to push this. That's the idea, is if you have a player like that, and I don't know if the Cowboys do, you could line up CeeDee Lamb at running back and do bits like that, and I think that he would be successful. So I don't know how much this applies to the Cowboys other than to realize that you're thinking your running backs who are good receivers, and Zeke's a good receiver. Pollard, I think, is a better receiver, but they're both good receivers. And moving them out and playing them at receiver, and you're thinking, oh, yeah, we've created a great mismatch. You'd be better off, it turns out, just lining up an extra receiver out there, no matter who it is, Cedric Wilson, whatever. So that's interesting to me. I don't know if it's interesting to you, but it's interesting to me. Okay, what else did I say I want to talk about? Oh, yeah. So the rules on this page are, if you want to talk about something, what are you eating? CeeDee's new bit, check this out. This is CeeDee's new bit. So I have real dog bowls, but I moved one outside to be a water bowl while they were running around outside. And so I gave CeeDee just this little plastic bowl for his food. And he has decided over the last 2 days that when the food is gone, this is a toy. Just wanted you to know. Okay, from Chris. The rules on this channel are you leave a comment on this video, what you want to talk about tomorrow, and I'll try to get to a bunch of them. So Chris yesterday asked me, he said, outside of head coach, what new coaching staff has the most impact, or what new coach, I guess, has the most impact? And what a great question, and it needs to be all of them. Because last year, your linebacker coach was a disaster. Your special teams coach was a disaster. Your defensive coordinator was a disaster. So I'll call it a two-man race between Mike Nolan, the new defensive coordinator, and Bones Fossil, the new special teams coordinator. Because this is the worst special teams unit in the league a year ago. There's nowhere to go but up. And they've gone polar opposite with their thinking of what they want from this coach. One was a guy who had never been a coach of an entire facet of the game and special teams in Keith O'Quinn. And so now he's back in scouting, and they bring in a guy who's been doing this forever and is really good at it. So Bones Fossil, I think, is going to have a big impact, but defense is more important than special teams. You play it more often. It's more important. And so I think Mike Nolan's a great candidate too, because that's a guy that is going to step in here and say, all right, I saw what you were doing a year ago, and that was stupid. Here's what we are. We dare you to beat us. That works great if you got like 7 Pro Bowlers on defense. The Cowboys don't. So they're about to get more aggressive. They're about to play more press man, and it's going to be more fun to watch. They're going to go for turnovers. They're going to try to make big plays on defense. So Mike Nolan, Bones Fossil, those two, I think, will make the most impact on this team. Quentin Reese said, potential Pro Bowlers / all pros on the 2020 Cowboys roster. All right. Much like George R. Martin, I'm a pantser. I fly by the seat of my pants here, so I don't think about the questions and have my answers prepared. I just run through it. Potential Pro Bowlers / All Pros on the 2020 Cowboys roster. Amari Cooper. I mean, if another receiver goes for 11 or 1,200 yards again, they've got the potential for that. The question is just which one. Would it be Gallup or would it be Lamb? Okay, well, we'll come back to that. Definitely Cooper. Tyron Smith is still really good. I know people worry about him physically, but Tyron Smith is still really good, so he's definitely a potential Pro Bowler. Zach Martin's a lock as a Pro Bowler. Lyle Collins should be a Pro Bowler. He should have been last year, but his name wasn't big enough yet. Blake Jarwin might be a sneaky potential Pro Bowler. You got Kittle. You got Ertz. I won't go that far on Jarwin just yet. So Tyron, Martin, Collins, Cooper, potentially a second wide receiver. Zeke, if he gets enough touches, obviously could be a Pro Bowler. Defense, Tank could be a Pro Bowler. I wouldn't say McCoy or Poe. Alden Smith, if he plays 16, maybe. Van Der Esch, if he's healthy. I think what's about to happen is Van Der Esch is about to get the C on his jersey. I think Van Der Esch is about to be a captain, assuming that his neck works or his spine works. I think he's about to get to be the captain, and I think he's going to have the dot on his helmet and be the guy that's calling the defenses. So Van Der Esch has that sort of potential. I don't see one at corner. I'd love to say Cheeto. I would love to say Trayvon Diggs, but I don't see that with Trayvon as a rookie. I don't see it in the secondary. So on defense, I would say Tank and potentially Van Der Esch. So you got the potential to have 8 or so Pro Bowlers, up to 8 or so Pro Bowlers. Nathan Dyer, love your insights. Thanks. Do you think the Cowboys add another wide receiver or just work with who they have, specifically after the top 3 guys? So the top 3 guys obviously are easy. You have Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb. Now, after that, what do the Cowboys have? Why are you so excited to chew on a bowl? It's very strange. So after that, the names that I think are going to matter in terms of who might make the roster, Cedric Wilson. Ventel Bryant was on the team at the end of last year. And remember, you got 55 guys now, so they could easily carry 6 receivers. So we know 3 of them. And then Cedric Wilson could be 4, maybe Devin Smith, maybe Ventel Bryant. So, yeah, I could see him adding one. If there's a guy on the streets that they like, that they think could be that 4th guy and step in and play if you had an injury, because I don't feel great about what they have behind the top 3. I know a lot of people are talking about Cedric Wilson, and I liked him in his draft class, so maybe he could be your 4th and could play if somebody goes down. But, yeah, there's going to be an open competition for 2 or 3 receiver spots there, and I don't know who wins it. I mean, I'll say Cedric Wilson most likely is going to be one of them. But after that, I don't know. Devin Smith, John Vay Johnson, Ventel Bryant, Noah Brown. Got to remember Noah Brown. Although I think he was more of a favorite of the last coaching staff because they loved wide receivers that could block. And so that's that. Jason says, hey, Jeff, I'm a Cowboys fan living in Rams/Chargersville. Shaking my head. If Ruggs had been there at 17 instead of Lamb, do you think they make the pick or take one of the trade offers Jerry referenced? If it weren't Lamb available, if it were Judy available, I would still have wanted them to take him. If it were Ruggs that was the 3rd receiver off the board and he was there at 17, I probably would have wanted them to pick him, but I would have understood going Kayvon Chase on. To me, Jerry Judy and CeeDee Lamb were much more sure things than Henry Ruggs. But Henry Ruggs could have helped Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup a lot. So he probably would have been my top player available at 17 if he were available. But maybe they go Chase on. And maybe they do entertain a trade offer. But when your 6th best player is on the board, which CeeDee Lamb was for them, that one is pretty darn easy. Nick saw a stat on Michael Gelkin's Twitter saying Zeke led the league in yards from 11 personnel. Mike McCarthy was using 11 personnel 77% of the time his last year in Green Bay. Can you go into detail on if/how Zeke could have a career year due to this? If Zeke has a career year, it's going to be because of volume. It's going to be that he touches the ball a ton. And I think that's where we fall into the trap with running backs. Whoever leads the league in rushing was the best running back, and that's just not the case. Like last year, the best guy running the football in the league, Derrick Henry has a case for it. But I would take Nick Chubb over anybody else who was carrying the ball last year. And so, like, yards per carry can be a better indicator than total yards, but even that one's not great because how well did you block? How much do people respect your quarterback? And that's why I think Nick Chubb is really awesome. Over 5 yards per carry, and people didn't really respect your quarterback in Cleveland last year, and they weren't the best offensive line in football. So this team will run a ton of 11 personnel. You don't draft CeeDee Lamb in the first round to have him on the sideline. And you're not going to have Michael Gallup on the sideline. He had 1,100 yards as a second-year player. Cooper, Gallup, and Lamb, they're going to be on the field a lot. And so, yes, the less tight ends that you have on the field, the higher yards per carry you get. And that stays true across pretty much every team because people have to get out of the box to cover your receivers. You create more space. So Zeke could have a really, really good year. He could be a big benefactor of how good your wide receivers are and how good your quarterback is. But I would like Tony Pollard to get a chunk of that too, just to see. This goes back to what I'm talking about, innovation and being open to information. If Pollard continues to get over 5 yards a carry like he did a year ago on his, 80-something carries, he's got to get carries. You got to be open to the idea of, are we getting better results with somebody else? And if Zeke is getting the better yards per carry, feed that man. And the circumstances that they play in are different, so you can't necessarily draw an exact parallel between what the two are doing. But Pollard's got to be involved. That dude's explosive. He makes people miss, gets big yards. The dude's fun. Okay. Leave in the comments what you want to talk about tomorrow. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube page, youtube.com/Jeff Kavanaugh. I appreciate everybody who in the comments is talking about how much it helps because obviously this isn't the most fun time right now. So if you're enjoying watching these videos and burning 15 or 20 minutes every day, that's awesome. I'm happy to be any part of bringing you any sort of happiness during a day or even a distraction. But leave in the comments what you want to talk about tomorrow. Subscribe to the YouTube page and turn on the notifications so you don't miss when one goes up. Check 1053thefan.com every day, and I'll see you guys on the radio in a bit.